Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show where the action is the juice and where we live our lives a quarter mile at a time. I'm your host, Cisco from Misfit Minded. You can follow me on all the socials at misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
And I'm your other host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Each week we take the red pill and use our certain set of skills to break down the best action films of all time. Today we're talking about the 1984 film, The Karate Kid.
The odds are on their side. Experience is on their side. But now he's got someone on his side.
Fighting always last answer.
Someone who knows what it takes
Always guy.
and is willing to share it.
Look on your side.
You're the best friend I ever had.
You pretty okay too.
The Karate Kid.
All right. I love that. And retro style trailer right there.
Yes.
To get this bullet train started, let's take the listeners back to June 22nd, 1984. Made for $8 million, which today would be about $24 million, and grossed a total of $91 million. So it was a big summer blockbuster hit. And that would be about $250 million today. As my fellow podcasters on the blank check would say, a big tittied hit.
That's pretty good.
They don't say it anymore because they think they're gonna get canceled. But I love it. I love it.
It's a bummer. Yeah, it's always with love, you know.
I know. We're a fan of big titties on this podcast. Okay,
Exactly.
Cancel us. The movies that opened against at the box office were Ghostbusters, which made more than double its box office opening after being out for 3 weeks. Gremlins, which almost made double in its third week, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which beat it by $2 million in its fifth week. So, man, what a lineup! Like,
what a hard weekend to come out. You know, like this is a time when people are still, word of mouth is making it so that, like, in its third weekend, Ghostbusters is making like $15 million still, which is just wild to think of.
And I mean, they're all like genre movies, but I mean, like, there's something for everybody there. Like, you got this, like, the sci-fi comedy with Ghostbusters. You got the horror with Gremlins, but that's like a more kid-friendly
sort of
version.
Christmas in July vibes going on in June.
Which I completely forgot about. I definitely thought that was like a Christmas release. And
Same.
Then Karate Kid, which is like definitely summer vibes, which we'll talk about, and kind of a drama. And then Temple of Doom, which is just like one of the meanest movies ever made.
Right. I was so surprised it was making so much, but it's like, yeah, I mean, after you've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, you're not going to not go see the sequel, you know?
Yeah. And Steven Spielberg and everybody returned. But yeah, it was like one of those movies where I think Steven Spielberg and George Lucas both got divorced. I might have mentioned this on the podcast already, but I read Steven Spielberg's biography, and he straight up was just like, yeah, like, we just weren't in a great headspace during that time.
Sorry about that.
He's very honest about his career, so, but it does make sense, like, especially how, like, the female lead is treated in that. It's like pretty tough to watch.
It is his
I think
future wife.
Kate
it's
Capshaw, right?
Yeah. It is the woman he's going to now. He's still married to Kate Capshaw, and like everyone is like, oh wow, they're such a good pair. Like, she really helped him. So even though she's doesn't have a great part to play necessarily, is in the Indiana Jones that people don't necessarily love, it was like so important for his real life, you know?
It's like one of those, like, if you look up like the shrill woman trope in the dictionary, Kate Capshaw is
her photo is there. Yes.
From Temple of Doom is in there.
One of my favorite jokes from 30 Rock is someone brings up Steven Spielberg, and Tracy Morgan is like, Kate Capshaw's husband? It's the best.
As soon as you said that, I'm like, I know this is going to be a Tracy Morgan joke. Like, he just had all the best, like, one-liners, I swear to God.
Yep.
All right, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of the film here with our first segment called Getting the Band Back Together.
I don't have friends. I got family.
In this segment, we'll take a slow motion look at the filmmaking choices that went into the film and the ass kickers responsible. This movie was written by Robert Mark Kamen, and who also wrote The Fifth Element, so I didn't see that coming.
Wow.
The Transporter, and also Taken. So this is a guy who pens some like influential action scripts as his career goes on.
I mean, we've done 2 out of those 3, so I feel like he's kind of a movie buff's MVP. You know what I mean?
Yes, a sleeper MVP, because we didn't even see it coming, but here it is. And it was directed by John G.
Avildsen.
Avildsen, okay.
Yeah.
He did all 3 parts, and he also did Rocky 1 and 5. So I was like,
Yeah.
again, Rocky is a huge hit of fave of ours.
Yeah, I'm gonna come in hot. I think you brought it up. I think I'm gonna come in with the hot take right off the bat. Why not?
Please.
So on Amy Nicholson and Paul Shear's podcast,
Oh, I love it.
they
Yes.
covered Karate Kid. They kind of talked about, and so like their whole thing is they're trying to narrow down like the best films, like you
Yes.
know what I mean? Which is a little bit different than what we cover, but I mean we still rate these movies.
Of course.
And so they did Rocky, and then they did Karate Kid, and then there was this discussion of if you were a gun to your head, you had to pick one, which one are you going away with? And Paul said Karate Kid, and honestly, I think I agree. I mean, that might be like the hottest of takes, but Karate Kid is just like such a special film for like me and like so many other people. And don't get me wrong, I love the underdog story of Rocky, but something about like the coming of age element to this movie, it just hits me so hard. Like even watching it again, I've seen this movie so many times. I've seen it in the theater. I took my little brother to see it in the theater, and
awesome.
Passing this movie on to him, it just like it felt like so special, you know what I mean? And then it just everything holds up, like all these moments that I know are coming. Like, even as I'm talking about them now, like I'm getting chills, you know what I mean? Like there's just the music when it hits, like the soundtrack, the score, like, I mean, these are some of the filmmaking things, but yeah, Bill Conti on the score, I mean, just immaculate.
Let's go.
Everyone talks about the Rocky like score for good reason, but like this score is like so perfect. The moment where Mr. Miyagi at the end claps his hands together and the score like kicks in, I was like, fuck yes, let's go. It's so good. Like they're so smart about it, you know what I mean? Like and like even the soundtrack, like it's so 80s, but like it just takes me in a way that like Rocky doesn't necessarily transport me into the 70s. Karate Kid, I'm immediately in 1984.
Yes.
I even though these kids dress different and look different, we all went to high school. I went to a rich white high school. Can immediately relate. Like I'm trying to get all this personal info out there. So if anyone's like, "Are you crazy? Like this over Rocky?" Like, yes, there's just so many more relatable elements. I feel like to so many people, and I feel like when they brought Cobra Kai, that's what the shirt I'm wearing right now too.
Let's go.
When they transitioned into the TV show, I feel like it's just as good. Like maybe the movie sequels haven't been up to par as Rocky. Definitely Rocky's a better franchise, but with the way they've brought it back with Cobra Kai, and like now they're finding like new fans to get into Karate Kid, I'm like, climb on board. Like this ship has room. You know what I
mean? Yes. I mean,
so
I think
good.
You're absolutely right that there's something about how a coming of age movie just it hits harder than anything else. And because you and I are not born when either of these, Rocky or The Karate Kid actually comes out, when we will see these movies, we will be teenagers. So I can only relate to Rocky so much as a teen when I'm seeing this movie. Whereas like I am Daniel Shan because I am from New Jersey and I went to Los Angeles and I lived in the Valley.
I didn't even put that together. That's so perfect too.
Exactly. I was like, this dude, he's my avatar when I'm growing up. I'm thinking like,
isn't that crazy though? It's like two different people. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like so many people relate to this movie and the story. And that's why I think like it's like timeless. Like that's one word I just kept thinking about while I was watching it. Is like, this movie is like so fucking timeless. Yes, there's certain things that are like specifically in the 80s, but you can put this on for anyone. Like my little brother that's living proof. Like I took him to see it and he loved it just as much. And like we watch Cobra Kai now, and it's just crazy that they've brought this franchise back, and Ralph Macchio is back, and Johnny's back. It's like
I mean, it ages so well too because he's like the best kind of teenager. You know what I mean? He's respectful of adults. He's respectful of the other girl. The girls that he meets, of the kids that he meets. Like it doesn't have the same stuff that really ages out 80s movies when they were like trying to get on a fad or trying to be trying to actually be more for like young adults rather than actually teens in a way.
Yeah,
And
even
this
though
movie is so
karate
authentic.
is very 80s, you know what I mean? Like,
It sure is.
that was such an 80s thing, like, where, Bruce Lee brought it kind of to the West Coast, and then it
Yes.
just took off in the 80s for whatever reason, where everyone was trying to
Yeah.
learn karate.
I mean, especially like white dudes trying to learn karate too. Like
Yep,
that's the funniest shit. That's
I
like my
know.
favorite part of this is like that's right. There's like this whole group of white dudes that are like, "Yes, sensei," so serious about that shit. Which
No
is really
mercy,
funny.
no
Yeah,
mercy,
yeah.
sir.
But like, in all the areas that 80s movies, coming of age 80s movies sometimes like age out because it's a different style of coming of age, somehow this movie really maintains. It really does capture the idea of like, when you're going to a new school, when you're meeting new kids, when you're not like from the same crowd as the kids that you go to school with, even if you're, still going to school with the same kids you did since kindergarten, there is this experience of like, I'm trying to establish myself. I'm trying to go after the things I want. I'm just trying to exist here. And I feel like this movie really captures that in a way because, he's an only child. So he has no siblings. He, of course,
I
fits in with
know.
adults. He is such an interesting character.
I love this character so much, like, and I definitely thought about that too because, like, yeah, I moved. It wasn't like that dramatic of a move, but I was like, at least I have like my brothers here with me, and we can all like agree that this sucks together. You know what
Right? We have each
I mean?
other. We
uh,
remember what it was like, so we can kind of have that comparison. It's like nobody in Southern California has any idea what it's like to be in New Jersey or Newark,
I
even
know.
like a completely different situation. And his like Italian American sentiment is really, really
Oh my
fun.
god,
And
it's
just like
so
just gives
good.
me so much nostalgia because fucking everybody where I came from is like that. Like they all have that fucking accent, the way that he talks, the way that his mother is. Just
And
it's
it's
too identifiable.
it's embedded in here. Like, this is not like us just, gesticulating for a podcast or whatever. Like, the first thing when he meets Allie for the first time, or sees her on the beach rather, and like the guy's like, he's like, "Who's that?" And he's like, "The Hills, man. She's rich." And it's like these people know that like status is everything. Like, it
That's
doesn't
right.
matter like, who you are, like what skills you have. It's like and so like that's another thing I think that makes it like so relatable is that
Right.
you not have a lot of money like most people don't. You know what I mean? I certainly didn't, but like it's a underdog story in a different way,
Yeah.
than Rocky. There is a lot of overlap though too. Where like again, both Italian American, both from like poor means, both like I was especially reminded like during the flirting scenes with Ali. I was like, this was 100% from the Rocky playbook, like the corny jokes, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And so John G. Elson, like I don't say that. I guess it's just because Rocky won Best Picture, you know what I mean? And I was looking at like the letterbox ratings for this one, and they were like shockingly low to me. Like I was like
Blame.
compared to Rocky, like it was like 3.5 out of 5, and I'm like, well, I don't want to skip ahead, but I'm just like, really, like why isn't this on that same level? Like I think it definitely deserves to be on that same level, and not just because the director worked on both. Like they're just both very good stories. You know what I
People
mean?
disrespect stories about teenagers. Like that's what's really
Mm,
frustrating to me is that like
yeah,
movies for kids or teens or whatever, they're like rarely actually given any respect. And I do feel like, my youth is really the heyday for when filmmakers are telling stories about teenagers or even small kids. Like this movie was making me think of The Sandlot also, like another fantastic
yes,
kids movie that like truly respects and treats the children with dignity. And that's exactly what's happening in this story. Like even the Cobra Kai kids, like even though they're struggling, there's something about how like they're not just tropes. Like they do represent some of those kids that like are trying to be something because their parents are wealthy and they have to fit a mold. It's like that doesn't feel good to them necessarily either. But when you're a teenager, it's very hard to navigate a world. You're an adult sort of because you have these ideas about who you want to be and what you want to do, but you're still under your parents' roof, so you still have to like live by their rules and like be
I
what they
know.
want you to
Oh,
be. It's
I love
really
the mom in
hard.
this too. Like she is so great.
The
Like
greatest.
and again, so relatable. Like the mom that's just like so overbearing and embarrassing, but like
But like
she,
loves you so much.
yes, like I specifically love the scene where she's asking about Allie for the first time. She's like, "Any girls?" And then he's and he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Is she cute?" He's like, "Nah." I don't even, you know.
Yes, but he can kind of open up to her. You know,
I know.
she's a single mom, so she has to do a lot, you know, to take care of him and stuff. But they have such a dynamic that's so authentic and real to like what single moms in the 80s used to be like with their sons. And you know, the way that my favorite scene with
Single mom
her
too.
is when she interacts with Allie's parents when she's taking him
Oh
to pick
my
them up,
god.
and she's like, "Don't worry about it. Like, I know how to work the car." You know, she's not embarrassed of who she is. She's not worried that her kid is going to get chewed up by these people. She's like, "Go after whatever you want. You know, I believe in you and you deserve to go for what you want, and you're a good kid, and this girl's going to know that." You know, like she feels like a real mom. And I think that's another piece of like movies about teenagers is the people who play their parents are so important because those are helping all of us understand our own parents a little bit more, or understand kind of like what we wish our parents could have been like, and maybe going to influence us a little bit and be kind of surrogate parents for us.
I
And what a
know.
great mom she is.
She really is. Like, she kind of doesn't have much to do in the second half, which is fine, but I love all the buildup of stuff that, like, especially the scene where, like, Daniel breaks down, you know, the first time and throws his bike away, and he's like, "Wow!" Like, I'm not trying to say that to like make fun of him, but it's very raw and like emotional. Like I was getting emotional watching it. You know what I mean? Like again, I've seen this movie 100 times.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
fact like where, you know, he confronts her like, you know, you didn't ask me before you moved here, you know, like you don't want to hear the truth because you want me to lie and pretend that everything's great here, but you know, it's great for you, but it sucks for me.
That's exactly it, right? That's
You
what it
know?
is to look at children's stories with dignity, to understand that like just because they can't pay the bills or whatever doesn't mean that they're not part of this family, they're not part of this
A lot of
experience.
parents don't ask too, like, you know what I mean? That's not a privilege that many kids are given, you know what I mean? I wasn't, you know, like that was the thing where I was
Well,
just
it's a pretty hard privilege to give unless you're like, you
yeah,
know, super rich or whatever. But I guess like that's again, this movie still takes the time to do that, not just
yeah.
overlook it, not just act like it's a thing kids don't deal with, but instead address it, even if it doesn't have an easy answer.
Yeah, I was having this discussion too. I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but like I saw the Super Mario Brothers movie finally recently, and I just did not like it very much.
No, I thought it
No,
was pretty cute.
and one of my friends was like, "It's a kids movie, you know, like what do you expect?" And I was like, "Dude, think about the amazing kids movies we got growing up,
We
and
really
compare
did.
that to Super Mario. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
we should expect more. You know, like stop
kids
just
deserve
because
more.
they're for kids. Exactly, like they deserve more. You know, so that's why you know obviously it's not made for me. I realize that, but yeah, well, whatever. I do want to talk about like some of the filmmaking stuff in here because that
Yeah.
was one thing I was definitely looking for where I necessarily probably wouldn't have noticed, you know, when I was younger. And yeah, he directs the shit out of this thing, Ellison. I have to say, like, I was just like, so some examples. I love the tracking shot when they first move into the apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like following Daniel around.
Yep.
He's kind of meeting the people there, and like he's very charismatic. Like we'll talk about that the next thing, but like you root for this kid and you really like this kid. Like
Yes.
he's trying to make the best of a shitty situation,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell that. Obviously, the crane shot at the end at the tournament was like fucking blew my mind. Like it was one of those like it was a hidden one where it was like just panning with Allie and Mr. Miyagi and Daniel, and then as soon as they get in the tournament, goes into a crane, and it was just oh, I was in heaven. I was
It's
in like
thoughtful.
fucking it was great. Um and even the reveal, like the certain things they don't show, I thought were like so well thought out. I mean, the first time you meet Mr. Miyagi, it's like, who is this guy? Like he is so mysterious and like almost scary. You know, he's just all he's saying is hey, like it just it's
Yes.
he's not
Yeah.
even looking at Daniel. He's like kind of in shadow. Like it just feels so purposeful. Like every decision in here. Like I don't. There's really nothing in the filmmaking. We talked about the music already that I can point to and be like, this is a wrong note. Like everything just fits so perfectly together.
Well, exactly. It's like just because the story is somewhat straightforward in terms of like, you know, it's not this like high concept or whatever, doesn't mean that there can't be like thoughtful movement in the camera to mirror the experience. Like something about how Mr. Miyagi is in shadow has to do with the fact that like Daniel it has to discover everything here. It's all new, it's all mysterious to
Yeah,
him. He doesn't understand any of it, but that's not like stopping his confidence because, you know, he is a charismatic kid. And I do feel like that's where filmmaking can reflect the respect that you have for like a teen story. Is that like you respect that his perspective is valuable and that's what you're going to try to capture with the filmmaking. And I do think that, like, to your point about kids movies today and even like movies about teens today, there's not like that. There isn't that acceptance of the unique perspective that a young
They
person
don't trust
has.
their audiences, and that's one thing I loved about this too. Is like, we don't get this like huge monologue about Mr. Miyagi talking about his past. You know what I mean? You get like bits and pieces here and there. Like the most we get is that scene where he's drunk, which again, another scene that just like breaks my heart. Like
Yep.
it's so well acted, and just like, again, Daniel kind of has to take care of him for a change, as he's like confessing all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Some other shots, I mean, I could go all day on this stuff, but the golden hour shots
Beautiful.
when they're like training, on
Yep.
the beach, when he's like practicing the crane technique, like it all looks so great. And then the script, like the last thing I want to talk about kind of is just like, again, trusting their audience. Mr. Miyagi doesn't have to tell Daniel at the end, hey, you should use the crane technique. Like that's like what we would get today. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Daniel just does it. We remember it from earlier in the film, and they trust us that we can do that. You know what I mean? And it's just, I miss that so much, where it's like, it makes it feel so much better for us as an audience that we put those pieces together. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Exactly. We're actually connected to the story because it's making
Yeah.
sense to us rather than someone spoon feeding it to
Yeah.
us. And yeah, I agree. Again, like just the thoughtfulness of this story is kind of beautiful. Like, it's about a father-son dynamic for a boy that
Yes.
doesn't really have a father and for a man who should
Doesn't
have
have a
had a
son.
son and was
Yeah.
not able to. So
Exactly.
there's this like, just like how all movies that are actually really good are about something bigger than the small story that we feature. Again, this movie has, dignity and respect for the fact that like a child raised by a single parent is resilient in many ways, but that doesn't mean that there's not something that they could still benefit from. And the same with like a man who's able to overcome, the great loss of his wife and child doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to have the reparative experience of a young man who's going to respect him and need his guidance.
But again, like we get that exposition in that drunken scene, but we don't get everything. Like he's in that army uniform. He doesn't mention that really. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Daniel has to read the newspaper and find that stuff out.
Yeah, they show it.
Yeah. So yeah, showing, not telling. And okay, promise, last thing, because I know we have to move on.
Yeah, we
But
gotta
yeah,
talk.
like Eye of the Tiger, of course, Rocky, like legendary stuff. You're the best around. I mean, come on, that is on the same fucking level.
It seriously is.
Every time, Allie, you're the best, Daniel, and then it goes right into that song. I'm like, oh man, it's this is blockbuster shit. You know what I mean? Like this
I
is, to
miss
me,
it.
this is what movies are all about. And
Yes,
then
original songs for films need to come back and they need to be good songs.
yes, and then Cruel Summer. Like I remember,
Let's
like
go.
before I'd even ever been to California, like this was my mind. What California was Cruel Summer playing with like blonde high schoolers like walking back and forth.
Yes. Yeah, in like bikini bathing suits.
Yes.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's all the filmmaking. I mean, that's a lot, but again, this movie is just so packed with text and subtext
hmm
that it's just, I could go on all day, but I know we have
It's
a
just
show to run
valued.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything is valued here. It's thoughtful filmmaking, thoughtful storytelling, thoughtful performances, thoughtful everything. It's an amazing collaboration of every piece of filmmaking kind of coming together and, about a teenager. And that's just like not something we really see a lot of in the modern time, which is disappointing because I want to see more of that for sure.
Yes.
But yes. Yeah,
Agreed.
we've already kind of started talking about performances.
I know,
but
that's what I was like,
let's,
let's go.
no worries. Yeah, let's move to our next segment, which is called Choose Your Fighter.
Welcome to the party, pal!
This is where we take a look at all of the bros and babes that flex their acting muscles, and sometimes their real muscles, for us movie buffs. The film stars Martin Kove, Elizabeth Shue, Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi, and Ralph Macchio as Daniel-san. So, what were some of your favorite performances? I know we already touched on some, but I mean, I got 2 pages of notes here, so I can
That's
definitely find something.
fantastic, as you should. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the lead guys are something we can keep opening up and talking about. But I have to say, like, I love Elizabeth Shue in this. She is
Oh
a
my god,
fantastic,
she's so
like,
good.
lady
Yes.
character who is both trying to reach above, like, circumvent the idea of being this type of female character by putting more color and dimension into, the young woman whose parents are wealthy, who kind of has to fit into a box and is gonna be seen by, like, her ex-boyfriend a certain way and maybe by, like, this new guy a certain way too, misjudged on all accounts, but, like, just right in there anyway. She's like seems to be jealous of the dudes because every chance she gets, she is hitting the shit out of Johnny, which is
I
just
know.
so funny. Like
Yeah,
punching,
it's
hitting, always, pushing, just like so. She too is aggressive and assertive in terms of like when you're a teenage girl and it feels like all these dudes are making choices and they think they know who you are, and so do your parents and everyone else. It's hard. It's hard to be a teenager, boy or girl. And I really feel like even though she has of course, a smaller part than Daniel does, she still finds a way to transmute that or translate that, and I really
yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I just had the biggest crush on Elizabeth Shue, probably from this movie, honestly, and
She's a
but
friggin' queen.
she's amazing, and but besides that, like, yeah, we've definitely done movies where like this type of character does not get half as much as what she gets to do in this. Like you said, like I think every character is so fleshed out, even in the small scenes that they have, that like you understand that she is trying to balance out these two different worlds, just like Daniel is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then in Cobra Kai, they even put that to Johnny, where it's which I want to talk about a little later.
Mm,
But every one of these characters has another side to it, and so you see that where she has this ex that won't leave her alone. Daniel tries to be the hero, and just fails time and time again. And so, I think I went into this trying to be like, I thought maybe the relationship stuff wouldn't hold up, but I thought it was held up fantastically. Like,
yes.
because every time they fought, it wasn't just like, a lot of times, the female characters are just like, crying about, and we even get that in Rocky a little bit to once it gets to the sequels, definitely like,
Yeah.
why are you still fighting? Blah, blah, blah. And it just gets kind of redundant. But in this one, you understand both sides. You understand that Daniel doesn't want to talk to her because he's getting the shit kicked out of him every
Yes.
day. And
Mhm.
you understand that, she is kind of getting embarrassed by her friends by talking to Daniel too. Her friends, by the way, Jesus Christ, I didn't remember how they were dicks. They were
Yeah.
dicks the entire time to Daniel. And so again, just it just further complicates this web where there's so many things going on, which is high school. You know what I mean? Like this
Yes.
is high school.
That's part of the authenticity is that like
Yeah.
when you're trying to figure out who you are somewhat shackled to like whoever your friends kind of were even before you get to this coming, this developmental stage in your life. And I do feel like I like when finally the friends kind of turn around and they recognize that like he is different and that like, he
Do they
doesn't
turn
know
around
her.
though? I don't know.
At
Like,
the arcade scene, when he's like giving her shit about being like, "Oh, okay, I get it. Like you want to pick this guy that's like in your league," and her friend is like, "Dude, you weren't there." She punched him in the face because he forced that kiss on her. Like she's
well,
never
like
been
I feel
anything but
like
nice to you. She's giving you a chance, man.
even the last line she gives, it's like she still doesn't like Daniel, in my opinion, where she's just like,
Yes.
he's like, she didn't tell me. He goes, she shouldn't have to.
But I guess like that
I'm
does say
like,
something
Jesus,
about
I get
how
it.
these kids are all starting to learn each other based on
Yeah.
these behaviors. And like, that is telling because like that girl, maybe she's not going to be able to break out. But in this instance, like she represents the fact that like all of these young women want to be who they are without having to prove it to people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, those are bad friends. Like,
They are.
honestly, like they just are. And so,
Absolutely. Daniel's
and
friends aren't that great either. They could have warned him, like, hey, yeah, she
right.
is really pretty, but just like be careful. She used to date this dude who's like a
And
real dick.
that guy Freddie from the beginning seemed like such a nice guy, and then as soon as he gets beat up once, they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna head out, bro." It's like,
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, sorry, dude. Didn't realize you
I'm
were a
like,
loser." Like,
Jesus.
what?
It was it's. I mean, they make it seem real cutthroat. I'll say that.
Again, that's high school though, right? Like,
It
you
is
do one thing and you can be completely ostracized.
territorial for sure. But yeah,
Mhm.
she's fantastic, and I think a big part of why the reason the sequel doesn't work as well is because Elizabeth Shue was not in the sequel, unfortunately.
Poor shoe.
So yeah, they do bring her back for Cobra Kai though. Spoilers for like,
Yes,
and
fantastic,
so
as they fucking should.
she's great.
I need more shoe all the time.
Ralph Macchio. Let's while we're on the alley talk. I
Stellar.
mean, he is. I feel confident saying he's one of the best kid actors like I've ever seen. Like
Same.
he's just like again, I don't know how many other words to say, but like so raw,
Yep.
so real.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I never feel like he's forcing it. You know, like even the stuff that he's like not. You can tell he wants to talk to his mom, but he just can't. You know, like because of pride or ego. Same thing with Allie. Like when she tries to talk to him after he got beat up, and he's just like, "Just leave me alone, all right?" Like
Yep.
you just can't. He does not want her to see him like that. You know what I mean? Like, and again, you understand that where it's like he's not just being an asshole. There is a psychological reason
Yep.
for all of his actions and all their fights that they have. You know, before they make up at the end, they all make sense to me. They don't feel inauthentic, like we're
No.
saying.
No, that's true. That's exactly right. He's such an authentic actor. And like, I have seen The Outsiders also, and I'd seen The
Oh,
Outsiders like around the time I'd
so
seen
good.
this. And it's just amazing like how real his performances are because he is such a young man at the time. Like I think he's like actually in his early 20s when he makes this, which is like the funniest shit ever
He
because he's
looks
so
so
little.
scrawny. I know it's so crazy, but that's high school too, right? Where like
Yes,
some
you're
kids would
supposed to
look
sort
like
of be
that.
this man, but you still have a child's body or a child's face going on, you
I
know?
love his crackly voice too. It's like again
Yes.
that adds to the authenticity a lot too. Where, um, I'm just trying to think of like some lines, but every line he delivers, right? It just that swagger, that confidence that he has. It's
Mhm.
just that much funnier with like someone clearly going through puberty.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And like the way that he's able to relate to the adults. Like I think part of what makes him such a good actor is like he's not just good against people around his age. Like him and Elizabeth Shue have such really good, authentic chemistry, but then the way he's relating to the woman who plays his mother and the way he relates to Mr. Miyagi, like he has he is connecting to every actor he shares a scene with, and
Oh
that
my
isn't
god,
always
yeah.
easy for, young adult actors or children actors. And it's just like one of those things where whoever he's in a scene with, he's like doing what actors say you're supposed to do, like really listening to people, really like feeding off of them, not just like, spitting his lines out or something.
Yeah, like even I was like trying to look for some like funny lines. Like yeah, the one with his mom, she's like, she's hotter than Judy. He goes, "Oh ma, she buries Judy."
Yes, she buries Judy. Yeah, she's smart. He's the best. He
And then
really
he
is.
talks to himself like it is very Rocky. Like I was very reminded, like where he's just like, yeah, hot, her
I mean, these
smile.
are the same kind of guy, in many
Yeah.
ways. I think that's part of why these movies like can resemble each other in a way. And of course, the same director, or I'm sorry, the same writer is interested in telling stories about this kind of guy. It's
Mhm.
just amazing that like in each instance, the actors are so authentic within the characters.
Yeah, and I mean, we can get into like Pat Morita too, but
Oh,
again, it's like
Miyagi, dude,
all their
nominated
scenes
for an Oscar for this, by the way.
and
Nominated for
well
Best
deserved.
Supporting Actor. Like what?
Well freaking deserved. I mean, is
But
there
like,
any
when would that ever happen today? In what
I
movie
know.
that's for teenagers someone take his performance seriously? He earned it. He deserves it for it to be taken
Yes.
seriously. But they would never write a character like him today, where
No.
they would give him that chance to like help. I feel like it's important to have characters like this in kids' movies because it helps children understand that adults are just like older kids. Like that, like he was a
Yeah.
young man one time. He went through some hard shit. And just because he looks like an old man doesn't mean he doesn't get sad, doesn't mean he hasn't had pain in his life. And you need these scenes. And he really humanizes the fact that like teenagers all look at adults and are like, idiot, stupid. And this is how you like bridge that gap between like, no, everybody is living their life for the first time. Just because they're older than you doesn't mean they didn't also have harrowing teen years or young adult years.
I know. I just like we talked about kind of his introduction already, but I just love that he's just the maintenance guy at their apartment building. And
Yes.
like the first time when he walks in on Daniel doing the karate, he's like, learn from book. And he's like, yeah, and I took a class at the Y. And then he's just like, what happened to your eye? And he's like, yeah, fell out of a bike accident. He immediately calls bullshit. And he's like, but your hands are not hurt.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Like and so I think, like, looking at it from 2024 lens, it definitely is the trope of like the, magical Asian or whatever. You know that
Yeah, especially the like way he's talking, the way
yeah,
he's written
which is
and
not how
speaking.
Pat Morita talked.
Of course it isn't. Of
Yeah.
course it's not.
I think people might not know that though. I honestly think like, younger people watching this for the first time might not realize that this is a performance.
Yeah.
I think the reason it gets away with it though is because Mr. Miyagi is such a great character. I mean,
Yeah. It's
he
not written
is
to make
so
him sound stupid. It's just
it's not,
simple. Yeah.
which is what a lot it's like some of the other movies during this time would have done. I was thinking of 16 Candles or whatever, which would have come out as, what I mean? It's not 16 Candles level. They're not like banging a gong every time he comes on screen or anything like that. It's not, the score is like definitely like that Eastern element
Flute
to
there.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not, again, nothing like too offensive. And like he's really smart. Like he's really smart.
And he
He
has
is
depth, we
yes.
learn more and more about like his wide life and all the things in
Mhm.
it. Because like when we first saw him again, I was like, I thought he meets him at his house, and then I was like, oh right, he's the maintenance guy. This
Yeah.
isn't where he lives.
I
But
know
like
he's
at
kind of
first I
a
was like,
dick
he
too.
lives back here?
He's kind of a
No.
dick too, where he's like, "What are you gonna do it?" He's like, "After what? After."
Yeah, I'm used to like dealing with a bunch of complaints that like
Yeah,
I'm not gonna care about.
and just slowly, he starts to like this kid again. That relationship feels just as natural as him and Allie. It really does. Where it's
Yes.
just like he is seeing that this kid is in a lot of trouble,
And need.
and
Yeah.
need. Yeah, he needs a father figure. He needs someone to help guide him
Yep.
because he is on a path of like anger and revenge.
And
And
he's not a disrespectful teen, like
no,
he is incredibly respectful right away, like, talking to him and asking him
yeah,
questions and everything, which is just like you just don't see. No one would write a teen like that, but I know many teenagers that are like that. So it's like, they're
yeah,
not all assholes, and I feel like that's part of it too, is he like warms Mr. Miyagi up. Mr. Miyagi has no space for him, assuming he's like every other little Southern California teen or whatever. And instead he's like, "Hey, Mr. Miyagi," which is the
oh
best shit.
yeah, I love every time he corrects him, like with the same thing with the bonsai trees, and
Yep.
Mr. Miyagi. He has to keep correcting him, but he
Yeah,
gets it right. He does get it right eventually. He does learn. Again, it's
he's
not making
listening.
fun. He's not making fun of his accent or anything like
No.
that. And I think like I always love that part on the beach too, where those guys are like being super racist to him. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And he just breaks the bottles on the top, and he's like, "How'd you do that?" He's like, "I don't know, first time."
Yeah, he takes
This
it in
movie's really
stride.
funny too.
Like
I gotta
in a
say,
way, he's kind of an avatar for Daniel too, where he's like, "Hey, man, I know what it's like for people to like misunderstand you, misjudge you, and then treat you that way. And you don't have to take it to heart. You don't have to internalize it negatively. Like sometimes you can, whip out some sort of trick or whatever, and then you can just let it roll right off your back. Like I don't know, let's get out of here. We don't have to hang out with these
yeah,
guys. Nothing." Like in a way, he is not only being someone to guide him, but he's like a kind of role model in that sense too, because he never
definitely, and a good
reacts
one.
in negative ways. Yeah.
A good one. I was just laughing when you were talking about the disrespectful thing because the scene that came up in my mind was when he was teaching Daniel to punch and he starts doing the Ali dance while he's punching him.
Yes.
And he's like, "How do you think about that? How do you think about that, Miyagi?" And he's like, "I think you talk too much." And he like takes him down.
Yes.
You're too cocky. And again, teaching him these good lessons though, where the movie does this really nice magic trick too, where again veering into magical Asian territory, but the fact that he can heal him a little bit,
Hmm.
and he's teaching him karate through like him doing his chores. Like
Yep.
I trust me, I realize all of the holes people try and pick in this movie. I don't care. I think it's so great. It's teaching him patience. It's teaching him discipline. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like that's what he's trying to instill in him more than anything. You know what I
That
mean? And
is
then
also supposed to be what karate's about. Like it's supposed to be
yes,
about discipline. It's
exactly.
supposed to be about patience. It's supposed to be about balance.
And I love the scene where again it plays naturally, where Daniel isn't like a jerk right away. He just like not the first thing he does where he's like, "Oh, really? I gotta do this." It takes like maybe the fourth chore, and I'm like, okay, that I feel like that's reasonable.
Yes.
I would probably ask around that same time too, like, "All right, bro, what's going on here?"
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because it's one of those things where like they are figuring out together like how serious this teaching of martial arts is like going to be, how seriously they're going to maybe take this tournament. Like that's also a thing that seems like it's organically developing because, like before he gets into the idea of like doing the training, he's like, whatever, I just bought you like 2 months where they're not going to beat you up. Like, who cares about the tournament? And then they like work their way into a space where it's like, actually, I guess we do care about the tournament and I do want you to be prepared. And so I'm going to sort of give that to you in a fundamental way rather than just in a way that like, these other kids are like going to this dojo and like using it to create confidence for the wrong reasons.
He's a great
It's more,
teacher. He's a
yeah,
great teacher.
yeah,
He lets Daniel figure out the lessons on his own, which I really like too. Like
exactly.
that's something a great teacher would do. And last thing I want to say here, he just reminds me of my grandpa a lot. I will say that. I think that
Of
might be
course.
another reason I love this movie.
Sweet
Like
grandpas.
Mexican immigrant, doesn't talk a lot, but like the most patient, hardworking guy like I've ever met. You know what I mean? So I definitely, when I watch this movie too, it's just like hits me in the feels in that way too. It's like
Yes.
all around, this movie just gets my life.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my grandpa was a pretty sweet Italian grandpa, but I would say Italian grandpas can be much harsher, not exactly sweet and nice. But I got lucky.
Definitely wouldn't be like, probably would say like, if you wanted to get revenge on somebody, all right, let's go, let's get revenge.
Yeah, we're gonna show up, lots of slapping, things that are not exactly loving, but I guess that's part of it too. Is that like they're, even though obviously we're like using interesting cultural tropes here, there's something about how like these movies still intended to be like, hey, cross cultural lessons can take place. And you can pick things up and you can learn from each other's cultures that are like not so separate from each other in terms of like, hierarchical respect or whatever, but like different methodologies and different ways to share those things, and that there is a benefit there. It's just, it was always being written by some like white guy who was guessing, so they could only do so much.
And I do just want to like real quick before what's the next section. Like, I think the villains in this are, again, I'm comparing it to Rocky a lot, but that's because everyone's Apollo Creed is a great villain.
Yes.
I mean, Johnny in this one is like, God, you just want to fucking punch this guy in the face at every scene. It's just the worst. Like, and so like you get like it really pushes that anger, like you feel.
I will say, as like an adult, when I watch this, I like feel so much more empathy for the Johnny person, because like that guy I know like grows up and then hates himself
in a bad environment, and that they go into that in Cobra Kai, where like they follow up with him, which again I think is just another magic trick this franchise has pulled off. And then Martin Cove, like that's his father figure. So how do you think Johnny is going to grow up and act all the time? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
No mercy.
Not great. Yeah, no space to talk about how he's feeling or what's going on with him, whatsoever. And like that's exactly it. Is that like he's such a good villain because he too is wearing that raw like, I'm trying to do whatever I can do to survive. I'm trying to please everybody. I'm trying to be the right kid. I'm trying to be the strongest one. What the hell do people want from me? And why isn't it working? Like, why don't I have the girl that I should? I'm rich and I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Like I'm listening to my sensei. Why am I not having everything that I want?
Yeah, you guys really need to watch Cobra Kai if you haven't yet. I keep bringing it up for a reason. I think it's one of those, the magic trick of it is, if you don't know about it, is like there was this online theory for a long time of people being like, Daniel is the villain of Karate Kid and he goes to this school. You never heard of this?
No.
This is how Cobra Kai got started. My theory of how it got started. There was an online thing. Daniel's the villain. Johnny is trying to go to this school. He had just broken up with his girlfriend. He's feeling shitty about it. And then here comes this new kid treading on his territory and like trying to be. They use that in Cobra Kai. Like that is the first season where he talks about it from his perspective, that like Daniel took over his life and made it a living hell. And so,
I mean, it's another great 30 Rock reference. I am the protagonist. This is my story. Yeah. Right? Like everyone is the hero in their own story, and anybody who is challenging, their own journey is of course the villain. It's just that like, Cobra Kai allows you to recognize that duality, that like no one is truly just a villain and no one is really just a hero. Everyone is doing their best to relate to each other within a context. Exactly.
And Martin Cove comes back and a lot of other people too. I already mentioned Elizabeth Shue. Like it's just really great. And the final season's coming, which I'm sad about, but I do think like, it's probably about time that they close the story out, but it's been really good so far. So
yes,
highly recommend.
Again, like this story is powerful. It has legs. It has spanned a huge world from all the characters, which is really, really cool.
All right, let's go to our next segment called The Need for Speed.
Pain don't hurt.
This is the segment where we do what the Oscars don't do, and we honor the amazing stuntmen and women for their death-defying work and pick out the punch that knocked us out the most. All right, what are your favorite stunts in this one? Or I
I
guess like
love,
sequences of stunts, because there's like,
yeah.
fighting sequences.
I mean, I guess number one is obvious. I got to go with the crane technique and just the tournament in general. It's so fire.
It's perfect.
It's great. Like probably the best montage since Rocky, right? Right? Like it's just
Yeah.
such a great, and they do another smart thing again, not holding our hand where you don't know how karate works. No problem. We're just gonna drop you into this tournament, and you are gonna watch it, and it's gonna be badass and fun.
Yeah,
And that's
Mr.
what
Miyagi gives us permission to not know because he's
to
like, I
not
don't know what the
know.
rules are. Who
Yeah.
cares? Who cares
And
what the
that's
rules
what I
are?
love. That's the other thing I love about Mr. Miyagi is like even when he doesn't know something, he's just so calm about it. Like, he's just like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, we're gonna figure it out. No worries. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and when Allie pretends to be his translator, dude, I was fucking
The
dying.
best. And then they can't even get his mom down there. They can get Allie down there, but they're like escort his mom out when she tries to come through, like at a certain point. It's so good.
Yeah, and then I guess the training sequences like on the boat. I love like
Yes.
Miyagi's like knocking him off and being like, "You're still wet behind the ear," falls back on his back, laughing so hard. That is just so funny. And then Mr. Miyagi like jumping in the Halloween party. It's
Yes.
hard to beat that. I mean, it's just
I just love an adult beating up kids. It's so funny
it's
when it happens in movies. It's like, just a shocking thing. But like here also, he's like sort of a frail-ish old man. So you're like, he's not really like beating the shit out of these kids. He's just like, showing us the importance of
they
like
look. I
balance
mean,
and
it is
movement.
funny. The next day though, they're all like in casts and stuff. I'm like, damn, Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah, and
I didn't know he was that strong.
when he goes to the other dojo and the dude's like, "Hey, my kids say you jumped him." It's like, whoa, they're really feeling like attacked.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you got your facts mixed up there, buddy.
Hold up.
What about you? Those are the ones I had.
Mostly the same, I think I love when Miyagi finally comes to his rescue and sort of recognizes like, this kid needs my help. And these other kids kind of need to be taken down a peg because like their dude, when he's taking them down a peg, he's like having them do it to each other. So he's getting out of the way and he's like turning the kids against each other. And there's
Yeah.
something about like, hey, you think you can do whatever you want, but you can't. There is always some person stronger than you, even if you're the best at your dojo,
Mhm.
And so I like that as just like a lesson scene for everybody and for Machio too, to
So
be
many
like,
good lessons in this movie. We could have honestly ranked the lessons in this movie.
we surely could, yes. But Machio also learning that like he's not alone in this because Miyagi comes in is like helpful and he's gonna take him to the dojo and say something to the other guy. Like there's just I like those sequences. They're not exactly stunts, but they're kind of like emotional stunt scenes, as it were, because they're important pieces that need to be there. And I do think my favorite sequence still to this day is always when he realizes that like all of the work that Miyagi's had him doing was actually like lessons. The way
That's
that he
the
like
magic
comes at
trick.
him really
That's what it's
hard
like.
and
Yeah.
like his body can react and it's just that they're feeding off each other so well. Again, to point out like Machio's ability to be like so present with his scene partner, just at such a good scene. I love that sequence. And like, he looks good doing the karate moves, so there's
I was
that.
just gonna say that. Like, we should mention that like these actors are actually doing the karate, and that's one thing that sticks out to me in the tournament is that they look good. Like, like the final showdown between Daniel and Johnny, that's probably like my number one if I had to like narrow it down because they're so athletic and
It
it's
doesn't
it's
look
really evenly
choreographed.
matched.
Yeah,
No, it doesn't.
it
Yeah.
really looks like they're just going for it, and like the way Machio's like facial expressions are, it really looks like he's like, I just thought of this move. I just thought of this move. Like
Yeah,
none
he's
of
like
it
very
feels.
yeah, exactly. And then
Yes.
you get all those iconic lines in that sequence too, like, I want him out of commission.
Yeah.
Sweep the leg.
And then that kid being like, I didn't want to do it.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, that one's good too, but the other kid in the background, get him a body bag.
Oh my god, yes. So such good ADR, just making
The
sure
ADR is actually like really good
It's
because
very
there's a
good
lot
at
of it
this.
in this actually, and
Yes.
it all works. You know what I mean? It's very rare when we can say that too.
That's true. Yeah, sometimes it's like there just to be gratuitous, and here it was really like continuing to carve the story the way they wanted it, which is good. I like a lot. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are no kills in this
No
movie,
kills.
so we will obviously just go right to the next segment, which is called Exit Wounds.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
This is where we talk about the film's imperfections, decide whether they are fatal hits or minor flesh wounds. I'm just like, you probably could already tell I didn't really have anything for this. I just think this is like any hole you can poke in this movie. I feel like I could go toe to toe with you and explain why it actually works in the context of the movie.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like,
So-
all I really want are like a couple more moments between him and Allie, honestly, like a little bit more of his mom in the second half.
I was
of
thinking that
course.
too. That should have been the sequel, though. If they
yes.
would have followed that in the sequel, it would have been like, this is the perfect
Yeah.
setup for that.
And just like the ending is like over like that, I really could have stood for a little falling action where like, his mom is like, wow, I didn't even know you were training. Like something
yeah.
funny, or like him
I
and Allie
love
being able
the-
to like walk off into the sunset. The freeze frame ending is like a really funny
love
trope.
the freeze frame. I love it. Pat Morita's grin. There's nothing that makes me happier in this movie than Pat Morita
It's pretty
smiling.
good, yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, but I'm with you. Like the holes you want to poke in this movie, it's kind of pointless to go at it that hard because that's just like not what this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That takes us to our next segment called More Firepower.
Okay, so what do you need besides a miracle?
Guns. Lots of guns.
In this segment, we pick between our favorite action stars, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, or Keanu Reeves, to determine who would bring the most heat to this movie if they were in the cast. What do you got, Shani B?
This is a hard one. I don't know that I could see really any of these guys. I guess again, like my go-to is always Keanu. I feel like he could fit in anywhere. He's SoCal, so like he could totally be like,
You would be
hey,
pretty young
Daniel,
at this time. Yeah.
Yeah, like he could have fit. But honestly, like this was giving me like lots of Bloodsport vibes, like as we were getting closer to the tournament. And I was like, where's Van Damme? Like just like here. I want Van Damme to be around. Because he really cares about martial arts, so there's something about that. But in terms of our favorite guys, like Keanu, he just fits in every movie. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm gonna go with a cheat here. I'm gonna say Sly Stallone, and only for the reason that this could be a Rocky Karate Kid crossover, and I want to see that. Where like even if it's just one scene where they pass on the street, and Daniel's like, "You remind me of my Uncle Donnie," and he's like, "Hey, you look familiar too, kid," and then that's it.
That would have been fucking fantastic. That would have been fantastic. It's such a good. That's so good. Wow.
So,
oh man. Okay. In another universe, I hope that happens.
Which brings us to our last segment. Game over, man.
What a picture.
Good picture, yeah.
That is so much fun. I love that stuff, the killing.
A lot of killing.
That's the best audio cue. I love
Not
it.
a lot of killing in this one, but I just love Al Pacino just fucking loving horror and action. It's just
Exactly.
like, this is what our podcast is about.
Yes. In our final segment, we will rate the film, and this time we're going to do out of 5 bonsai trees. So
Bonsai!
where are you? Yes. What do you give this film?
I think it's probably the most obvious. If anyone listening, I'm gonna go 5. I can't. It's too personal. It just hits all my buttons. Like I didn't even mention like I played soccer in high school. I'm just like, is this movie me? Like, is this my
Seriously.
life?
Literally.
Every time I watch it, it's just like it pulls me in. Like I just there's no way I couldn't be pulled in by the relationship with Allie and like how does it balance all this? I'm amazed every time. How does it balance a teen romance, a father and a son story, a karate action movie all at once and do it so well? I don't know.
I don't know the answer, but I'm also giving it 5 bonsai trees.
Yeah.
I agree. It is also me. Like I'm not into karate or whatever, but I did play soccer. I grew up in a beach town. So even though I didn't come from Newark, when I came to California, I was like there for all the California stuff. Like it's just too relatable and too real and too nostalgic. It's such a good movie. So fun.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we did it.
I know. This is on my bucket list forever, so I'm glad we got it off.
Same. Yes. And also it's amazing that for the past 3 weeks we've just been like all 5s across the board. Like
I was just thinking that
is a fucking great month for movies.
Unapologetic, because this is a
100%.
banner year, and if you have a problem with any like us doing 5 stars constantly. Look at the movies we gave 5 stars to.
Exactly.
I think they speak for themselves.
And also, like, we've been pretty hard graders up until now. We're just had a really great time.
I'll say fair.
Yeah.
I'll say fair graders.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
these are like our faves coming up, So
you can't blame us. They're so good. Yes,
really
yes. All right. I think that wraps it up for us. Let's remind the people where they can find us.
Get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and on Twitch at The Buffs. Follow me on all the socials at Misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Take us for a ride and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And please leave a review. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. You can also follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
We're off next week for the 4th of July, but we'll be back on the 10th covering the original Michael Keaton Batman. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Until then, stay buff.